Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United transfer news. Now, are Manchester United or is Benjamin Šeško about to snub United as Amorim favours a move for Watkins? We've got new talks with Watkins, we've got new talks with Lammens. We're talking that this morning. We've also got an update on another striker that will not be coming to Manchester United. We'll talk about that as too. Also, very, very, very good interview last night again. Dorgu the night before. Luke Shaw last night. Beth out in the States talking to Luke Shaw. He's come out with things like he thinks this squad can win the Premier League. We'll talk about that. But he also talk about what Amorim's done at Manchester United. And as Luke Shaw describes, removing the stragglers has improved the squad. A very blunt message there towards the likes of Rashford, Garnacho, etc. So we'll delve into that as well. Of course, it is match day technically as well. We are playing Bournemouth well, I say it's match day. When you actually figure it out, 12 hours time, it will still be 10 o'clock at night, and then it's still another 4.5 hours after that. So technically it's tomorrow for a lot of you lot. Well, technically it's tomorrow for us as well. We'll talk on that as well. 10 o'clock show. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and smash a like. Get your comments in as always. We're driven by you. But look, we're going to start off with the big news. Now, look, I suppose the first few minutes of the show are basically going to be about the striker. We have got new talks with the goalkeeper, which I think is really, really positive. But we're going to talk about the striker situation. Now, towards the end of the evening show yesterday, we had an update from Ben Jacobs, who's on the show tomorrow at 2 o'clock, basically saying that there may be an openness to start negotiating at £50 million for Ollie Watkins if Ollie Watkins starts pushing for the move. So Manchester United obviously have been quoted around £70 million or 69 if you like the number for Šeško. So £20 million difference there if Man United want to do that deal. Now this to me is starting to get a little bit interesting. Obviously on Thursday we spoke about how Watkins was the priority. We're coming up for a week ago towards that tomorrow. Amazing how quick that week's gone. But if Manchester United prioritised Ollie Watkins last Thursday, what would make Ruben Amorim or Jason Wilcox or Omar Barada move towards Benjamin Šeško? Well, we know Christopher Vival is very much pushing this from the United side, having worked with them at Leipzig. But are we this morning actually looking at Manchester United? I mean, this is a huge call. This is a huge call, isn't it? And I feel like in some ways it's exciting. You know, you want a leader to make the big calls. You look through history. I'm not going to start naming names because people will say he made I nearly said Napoleon, but he did lose Waterloo and it was a little bit of a shit. But the reality is, you know, big leaders make big calls. We already know that Bruno Fernandes staying at the football club and being in the midfield is a huge call. It divides opinion. It generates conversation. Could we be looking at another one here whereby Watkins remains the priority? That's the player that Man United go for. They allow Šeško to go to Newcastle and Man United focus in on Watkins. Look, I would liken that to you're in a relationship with somebody you really like. You break up with them. You're out, you know, mingling, single, looking to mingle. You meet two really attractive people. You know, it might be a man or a woman, whatever. That's up to you. Might be a man and a woman. You might like both. But the point is, you find two really good prospects. Of course, you're a great prospect. You find two really good prospects, and it gets to the point where you've got to commit to one or the other. So you commit to one, you think it's the right choice, and then a couple of months later, you see the other one in a bar looking great, and you go, could have gone with that. The point is, as long as you're sure on the choice you make, then looking at the other option doesn't mean that they're not going to be a good option. They could be both good options is what I'm saying. Šeško and Watkins could be both very good options. And as I said last night, I think if the choice is to go for Watkins, it's going to upset some. But it's a big call. And you've got to respect that as long as they're doing what the manager wants, I think that's the main thing here. So what is the big news this morning? Well, this is the update on Šeško. We'll start with him because I think this is the player most of you want. So this is an overnight update from Fabrizio Romano. If Sesko decides he wants to go to Newcastle, they're ready to pay whatever it takes. They already know the conditions of the deal, so they don't even need to negotiate with Leipzig. They're ready to go and pay what Leipzig want. They're ready to go and pay what Sesko wants. They're also ready to pay whatever Sesko's camp wants. They know everything about the deal. They've been working on it for the last week, and they're ready to go for Šeško at any moment. But it depends on the player. It's up to the player to say if he wants Newcastle, and they'll be ready. So effectively, Newcastle are bending over for Sesko. Not in that way. I mean, they're bending over backwards. They'll do anything for him. Like they're going to pay Leipzig what they want. They're going to pay Sesko what they want. They're going to pay his agent what he wants as well. So Newcastle are there, cap in hand again, to another signing going, please, please, please. Is he going to say yes? But Romano says, don't forget Man United, as they keep working on the Šeško deal, they're in contact with people close to the player and they're ready to speak with Leipzig. They're still working on the deal at Manchester United, whereas Newcastle are ready. But United need to understand if they can be ready. This is also on the player as well. He can decide to go to Newcastle or maybe wait for Manchester United. Šeško is going to take his time. It's not imminent in terms of hours. It'll probably be some days until he decides what to do. So, look, this is far from over. And look, that's probably one of the biggest updates I've done in a long time from Fabrizio Romano or anybody. That is quite a lot of detail. I could easily summarize it by this. Newcastle will do anything for Leipzig and Šeško to buy him. Man United are thinking it through, and so is Sesko. So what have they got to think about? That's the big question. That's the big question. I said on Monday that the longer this goes on, the better it is for us. That's just so logical. That's like, you know, going back to the relationship thing again, you know, you're making your mind up between two. One of them is saying, I desperately, desperately want to be with you. And the other one's going, I want to be sure. I want to be sure this is the right move. Why would you not just go for the person who's desperate for you? Because actually, you clearly quite like the person who's unsure. And I would say the same thing with Šeško here. He can go to Newcastle now. He's obviously got some sort of reservation, whether that is, I like Newcastle, but I want to see what the offer is from Manchester United. That's what it looks like to me. So, as I've always said, the longer this goes on, I'm not saying it's the more likely we get Benjamin Šeško, but I think the longer it goes on, the more he is probably open to us. And remember, this is somebody that's, whether he wanted it or not, and he probably did, he's missed out on Arsenal. If he wants Manchester United, is he going to wait? And that's going to come down to us. So I genuinely find the Šeško deal. I mean, I'll tell you about the Watkins deal. I know a lot more about that, and I think we all do. But with the Šeško deal, I do find it a little bit like it could be as simple as what we were discussing on the 8 o'clock show last night, that you've got Favour, who is head of development and bringing young players through, who could be there saying, it's a huge mistake not to get him. It's a massive mistake not to go for him. You should be going and getting him. He's going to be a brilliant player in 3 years' time. You're going to regret it. You should get him. And then you might have someone like Wilcox and Amorim going, but Watkins hits the ground running. Watkins guarantees us this. He gets us into the Champions League. And then, you know, we're a different football club. But if Favour is going, but I think Sesko will get you in the Champions League, then the longer term plan with Sesko is better, isn't it? I mean, I do want to run a little bit of a poll this morning, actually, just to grasp where everybody is with this. I should have done it before. So let's go Sesko, Watkins, get your votes in. Obviously, you can get involved if you're watching, not watching live as well. With regards to Watkins, what's the latest on that? So look, if you're tuning in for the news, the latest with Sesko this morning, new news from Fabrizio is that this could take days, not hours. I think that leans towards us because, as we've already said, this would take hours if it was Newcastle because they're ready to go. So Sesko's not made his mind up, which means we're still very much in the race. This is good for us. On to Watkins, and again, this is really good for us. We're getting rumours coming out from Ben Jacobs that £50 million could be the price that Villa do. We know that Watkins is a priority. We know from last week. We know that Manchester United, do rate him. we also know that Watkins wants to join Manchester United. I mean, I know that's not official, but I said this last Friday. Like, I'm not speaking for Ollie Watkins. He's not going to do it. But I think any Aston Villa fan knows it as well. I mean, maybe it's fortunate because I live, the closest Premier League club to me is actually Aston Villa. So I know a lot of Villa fans. You speak to them about Watkins, and there is this feeling that him and Emery have hit the end of the road. There is this feeling that now he's broken the goal record, it's time to move on. It would take quite a turnaround in their relationship for it to be, to go back to what it was. I mean, this is a striker that missed out on both ties against PSG for Marcus Rashford. That does untold damage to a senior striker. He spoke publicly about that. Emery wasn't happy about that. So the Watkins-Emery relationship is strained. This is not like trying to sign Isak from Newcastle, where Newcastle and Eddie Howe don't want it to happen. This is a striker and a manager that don't have a great relationship anymore. So Villa can ask for £60 million, but there has to be some discount there because, honestly, I think Emery wants to replace Watkins. And I think Watkins wants to come to Manchester United. So if we're going to get some price leeway, I think United stay in the race. And look, 63% of you want Sesko this morning. That's starting to come down a bit. That's nothing against Sesko. Yesterday it was 74%. It might go up there again. But I think what's really important here is, and this is my stance, I ain't got a horse in the race. I'm not going to have a horse in the race. I can have a preference, but when you've got a horse in the race, you boo the other horse that's not yours. I'm not calling Šeško or Watkins a horse, but what I'm saying is it's a two-horse race to be Man United striker. As long as we deliver the best deal for Manchester United and the best deal for Amorim, I'll deal with it. As I said, I don't agree with some of the players that we're keeping, and I don't agree with some of the decisions we've made, but I will back those players and I will be vocal about that backing, and I will also back who we go for in the market. Look, you pay with your job. That's all I care about. I don't mind a Man United manager getting the sack. I really don't mind it if they make bad calls. But I think too many times over the last decade, we have sacked managers who didn't get backed and then fall on the sword of the owners. If Amorim finishes 15th next year, having bought Ollie Watkins and played Bruno in midfield all season, cheerio. It was nice knowing you. Good try, but you made two big calls a lot of people thought were not good calls, and you got them wrong. I don't mind that. So as long as we back Amorim, I don't really care. What I don't want to see is if we end up with Ollie Watkins, people going mad and going, it's wrong, because you're not the manager. I'm not the manager. You can register your disagreement, but surely you're not going to lose it over Man United buying a striker who has scored over 15 goals in the Premier League in the last 2 years, gets assists, and probably suits us better in the next 2 years than Šeško does. So I'm happy with either. But what I think you have to do, is play this the same way. Well, just play it like a proper football club. If I'm the CEO, if I'm the director of football, I'm coming out of this with either Benjamin Sesko as a Man United player or Ollie Watkins for about 50 million quid. Maybe cheaper. That's what I'm doing. What I'm not doing is watching Sesko sign for Newcastle and then being held to ransom by Villa until August the 31st. We've got to play this game. And it looks like we can. Things can change very, very quickly, but it looks like we're in control here, because if Sesko is thinking about what he wants to do, that means he's thinking about Man United. And in that time, you need to be speaking to Villa and going, look, we're negotiating with Sesko. He's not signed for Newcastle. He's thinking about us. Now, we've got a small window of opportunity here to do a deal with you. So some couple of good comments coming in here. So basically what I'm expecting from Manchester United over the next 2 or 3 days, maybe week, but let's say the next 2 or 3 days, because you haven't got a lot of opportunity here. If I'm Man United, over the next couple of days, whatever, I'm saying this. Šeško, we really like you. And we're trying to figure out how to do a deal. Aston Villa, we really like Ollie Watkins. We can't do a deal at 60 million. Now, by Friday, we might have a deal done with Šeško and we'll move forward. If you want to take this from us, then you need to give us a price that's doable. Otherwise, the door closes forever and we go with Šeško. And that's what I would do. And people saying, well, you can't do that. It's what bloody Arsenal did with Gyökeres and Sesko. We should be doing it as well. I think we've got to play this to our advantage. And people would say, well, no, you should just go for the player that you want. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, we didn't get plan A, we didn't get plan B, and we didn't get plan C. We're talking plan D here. So I can see the validity in both. And look, let's be clear here. Maybe Ruben Amorim wants Watkins. If I'm Omar Barada and Jason Wilcox, I'm still going for Šeško as part of the play. And I'm saying to Amorim, I'm doing this to try and get the price down with Villa. And if they don't bring the price down, we can't get Watkins anyway. So you'll be happy with Šeško. So just go along with this. We know you want Watkins, but we're not paying 60 million. We'll never get him unless we play the game. And even if we play the game, we might not get him and we'll get Šeško anyway. So I don't think it's set in stone who we're going to get. I just think we've got to play the game here. And the way to play the game is to keep them both in the play. It doesn't mean we're using Šeško. It doesn't mean we're using Watkins. We're just literally using the situation. Look, really, really simple. 2 cars you really like, both for sale, next door to each other. I like your car. I like your car. What's your price? What's your price? You know, somebody brings the price down. Somebody, you know, that's what we've got to do here. So look, I think last night after the 8 o'clock show, I was sort of, some of your comments really made me think that Watkins would be my preference. This morning I'm 50-50 again. Yesterday I was Šeško. Last night I was Watkins. This morning I'm 50-50. And you know what it is? I think what a lot of you said was spot on. I've always been a big fan of Watkins, and I do like Šeško. But I think the positives of Šeško for me are that he's young. He's only just 22. He's got a lot of talent. He could be one of the best strikers in the world over the next 3 years. And then he's at Man United. There's resale value, or he's with you for a decade. That's very, very appealing. Watkins, on the other hand, ain't going to be with you for a decade, but for the next 2 years, he probably scores you a shitload of goals, gets you back in the Champions League, and then you can buy the next Šeško in a year's time, or you've got Obi coming through. So I think the short-term benefit is Watkins. The long-term benefit is potentially Šeško. Now, what's more important? I think we need to be in the Champions League next year. That's my feeling on it. Let me grab some of your comments, and then we're going to talk about the goalkeeper. We've got some very interesting comments from Luke Shaw about winning the Premier League as well. With Watkins, we're actually buying time for Amorim, says Sudeth. Well, this is a great point as well. You know, if Šeško is a project, then Watkins is for the now. And it's the same decision Arsenal made. And I think Arsenal made the right call. Šeško would have been a project that could have been a great player for the future. But Arteta would get the sack if Arsenal don't win the league next year. Gyökeres comes in, you would expect to win the league because he's ready to go. And it's the same for Amorim. Amorim, you know, what's the point in a project striker for Amorim if he gets the sack in a year's time? Whereas Watkins comes in and buys him time. I think maybe that explains why, if it's true, Amorim would prefer Watkins. Also, you've got a player like Brian Mbeumo, who has played with him before. He's Premier League proven. So the adaptability could be quicker. I don't know. We'll have to see how we play it out. Maybe Watkins will fancy Saudi after United, says Glenn. Joining United gives Watkins the best chance to become a priority in the England squad, says Kevin. Have we ever had a more difficult choice, says Thornster. Well, look, it is a difficult choice. It's a really difficult choice. But imagine this. I embrace this, and I think everybody else should as well, because it is a difficult choice. But embrace it, because would you rather be in a situation where the club are negotiating for Watkins or Šeško, or would you rather be neither of them were available and you're looking at Calvert-Lewin, Callum Wilson and Nicholas Jackson? So we are in a fortunate, well, I don't know whether it's fortunate, but we are in a good position in a certain extent, because we have got 2 options that are quite decent after missing out on some really good options. But it's a big call. And that's why I said at the start of the video, it really is very similar to Bruno Fernandes, isn't it? Because it's going to divide opinion. Thank you very much to Sideth. What's our current roster of British players, and could that be a deciding factor in what we go for, says Phil? I think you'd have to speak to someone like Robert McCormack on that. I think as long as you can have 17 European players, 17 non-British players in your squad. and then you can have like 7. I don't know what it is, but look, I think we're okay. Like Luke Shaw's still here, Harry Maguire's still here, Mainoo's still here. Obviously, anybody under 21 is classed as homegrown until they're 21. So Yoro's still fine, Leon's fine, but yeah, you do have to monitor that. I mean, I don't know whether that would be a factor as well. Michael says, I'm all for Watkins over Sesko, but we should definitely be going in for both. If one deal falls through or a better option emerges, we're still in a strong position. Yeah, I don't think we'll get both, but I think I agree with you. You've got to negotiate for both. Plug Scope says, rebuild a club on a 29-year-old player is backwards to me. Arsenal and Liverpool didn't do this. I mean, look, I think I've explained my stance on it. You have got Obi, you have got this 18-year-old we're looking to bring in. You potentially still got Rasmus at 22. We have got younger options who can play up front, and Watkins gives you 2-3 years stability in goals. In 2 or 3 years, Obi's 20, so there's your heir to the throne. Maybe you bring somebody else in as well. We've always needed an experienced striker. We can't be a hypocrite to that. I've said it, many of you have said it, we need an experienced striker. We've needed an experienced striker for years. So you can't on the one hand say, well, don't get an experienced striker, because we do need an experienced striker. Where I would agree with you is United, through Ineos, have put it out there quite consistently that they don't want to buy players over 26. So to spend £50 million on a 29-year-old doesn't really fit with what they're all about. And I would say that if we bought Watkins for 50 million, the quotes of Amorim, of Ineos and Sir Jim will come out, because they basically said we don't want to do those types of deals anymore. But if the manager does, you should. You can't. Those types of absolutes are ridiculous in football. So imagine you had prime Ronaldo at 29 available for £50 million. We know, based on what Ronaldo did from 29 to 35, you're going to get 6 years of one of the world's best ever players. Oh, at the end of the day, another pint of champers. At the end of the day, pint. We don't buy players over 26, so you can't be absolute like that. There might be options that you should open yourself up to, especially if the manager wants to do it. Adrian C says, I would prefer Sesko due to his age. I'd support Watkins, but club must stop buying players approaching 30. Otherwise, we haven't learned from the past. Adrian, again, I don't disagree with you, but I think what I just said a few seconds ago sort of defeats that. We shouldn't, in any walk of life, judge a book by its cover. It's not correct. There are always exceptions to the rule. If that's just, that's like saying I'm from and I'm not, but, I'm from a working, well, no, I'll do it my way. I'm from a working class background. I've had to work for everything I've done, like a lot of you. And because of that, I would never be in a relationship or friends with somebody that's had a silver spoon in the mouth and comes from a rich background, because we'll never get on, because they don't understand what it's like to have nothing and work your way up. I've got loads of friends who've got money and have come from those backgrounds, and they're sound. It's stereotypical to do stuff like that, and you shouldn't do that. So I think that I didn't agree with Sir Jim Radcliffe when he said it, that we're not going to buy, or whoever said it, we're not going to buy people over 26. Stupid. I understand why, 99%, 95% of the time you might not do it, but there has to be exceptions to the rule. DJ says, is everyone missing that Sesko has a gentleman's agreement for a number of special clubs? Is United in the list, but Newcastle and Arsenal not? Yes, I think this is a good point as well, DJ. We don't know the full detail of this, but apparently there is a list of special clubs where the price for Šeško is 60 million, but we don't know who those are. Any progress on a goalie and a midfielder, says Edward. We will talk about the goalkeeper in a moment. There is an update on Lammens and Martinez to a certain extent. SNS says Watkins is Premier League experienced. He's played within Burmo. He's better for the system. He gets settled quickly. Šeško, great in 3 years. Amorim might not be there in 3 years. This is what I mean. Is there a right answer here? Or is there just another, should we sell Bruno or not? I just think it's in a way, this summer has turned into something exciting that I never thought it would be. I can't think of a summer at Manchester United in a very long time. Well, I don't know whether we've ever had one, actually, where you've got two, and we might still have more. The goalkeeper could present another one, but two huge decisions where there isn't a definitive right or wrong answer. There's just opinion strong on either side. So should Bruno go for £100 million or should we sell him? Yes or no? We know what that did. Should we go for Šeško or should we go for Watkins? Yes or no? And this is where we are. I don't necessarily think there's a definitive wrong answer or right answer. That's exciting. That's why the manager gets paid the money. If I was in charge, I would have let Bruno go. And if I was in charge, I don't know. I don't like sitting on the fence. I today would go with Watkins, but by midday I might go for Šeško. And that's what I mean. I can't definitively make an answer and stick with it. Edward V has gifted 5 memberships. You're a legend, mate. Thank you very much for that. Patrick Lynch says, I think one thing we forget is that when Ineos came in, they specifically said that the board, as well as the manager, would have a say on transfers. Amorim will have a final say, but not all the say. And Patrick, I love that. And I don't know what you think, Patrick, and I don't know what everybody else thinks. I absolutely agree with that. I love that. I love the fact that we don't have a definitive, because David De Gea left and Andre Onana is now in a bad way an immovable object in goal because of Erik ten Hag. Mason Mount for £55 million. I like the player. I never understood why we bought him. To this day, I don't know what role he is. I like Mason Mount, but I don't understand what we bought him for. I don't know why we bought him. Loads of people went mad. I was like, he's a good player. This is really interesting. I've got no idea where he fits into our team. So those sort of decisions, and there are others that Ten Hag made, I don't think they get made today. And I'm not going to knock Ineos for doing that. I think it's correct. The question is, if you've got Wilcox and you've got Amorim that want Watkins and you've got Favour and Barada that want Šeško, yeah, that's where it becomes problematic. But hopefully they'll come to the right decision. With age and other factors, Watkins is 40 million max as PZ. Rajaf says Watkins is a known quality in the Premier League, so signing him makes more sense, and Obi doesn't need to be thrown at the deep end like Rasmus was. Watkins should be 30 million tops as trader. Age and recent injuries. Not saying Šeško is better, but it's somehow a safer option. Yeah, but you know, when you say recent injuries, we've already done this. He had a couple of minor injuries last season and none in the previous 5. So I don't think the injuries comes into it for Watkins. I think the age comes into it. I think the price comes into it. But he's 29, not 35. And you can't really say he's a £30 million striker when he scored over 30 Premier League goals in his last 2 seasons for Aston Villa. I mean, I think there is a level of respect there. For me, it starts at about 45. It's somewhere between 40 and 50. That's the value. Jaden, thanks for gifting a membership. Hi, everyone, says Lee Cape Town. Just want to put it out there that at the end of the day, we get Šeško. Newcastle will end up with Jackson. That's small club mentality. And Acid23 says, I understand why people want Šeško, but I'm bored of short-term pain for potential long-term gain. I want results now, not maybe in 3 years. I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I mean, I'm willing to be patient, and the thing is, remember, getting into the Champions League this year is not success. That is a step. Long-term success is winning Premier Leagues and getting into the Champions League. So, you know, we are still talking long-term, even if we get in the Champions League. That is a relatively small step for Man United, and yet it's huge. I can't wait 2 or 3 years for us to be able to get in the Champions League. We need to be in the Champions League in May. That is a huge step for Manchester United. But if we do it, it's not like we're going to go, yeah, we're bloody back. Up yours, Ollie, and your winner in the new camp. We've just qualified for the Champions League in 5th. It will be a small step, but a big step. And that is where I would say that's the priority. Whatever gives us that, that's my priority. So, yeah, personally, I'd go for Šeško, but I'm excited by either signing. My big concern is that the club are complacent about how easy a Watkins deal would be, says James. And Sudef says, I say we only go for Watkins, let Newcastle overpay. And Mike Calvert says, morning, mate. I'd prefer Šeško, but I'm happy with Watkins, just the price. Could bring other benefits to the dressing room vibe and has Premier League pedigree. Jacob says the club has to get Amorim the guy he wants. Between Watkins and Sesko, the club already failed to get him Gyökeres, Kenda, Hjulman, and your thoughts. I agree. Jacob, I agree. We brought in 2 Premier League players who've got years in them now. We need a striker to score Premier League goals, and that is Watkins. Šeško is still a gamble, says William. More for an evening show, but can never catch them. Did you make a United Stand Whoop community? Been mentioning a Whoop lot lately, and you being 40. I never even knew I could do that. I could do that. That's a good idea. I will do that. You have to think about the way the club has been run lately. They sign young players for resale value. I feel that's the way they will go for Šeško. Keel says, I've had faith in Rasmus, 16 goals first season. And Watkins is miles better than Šeško, given United's dressing room is not well established like that of Liverpool or City. Where do you think we're going to go, Mark? Have to be really careful, because you might not, and I'm very bad at this, you might just think we're 10 people sat talking about football. We're 16.5 live viewers, and we'll probably have over 200,000 views of this video, not to mention clips. So for me to sit here and say, what do I think is going to happen? I am loath to do it in a sense, because who knows who hears it. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm not saying we've got in any way got any shape or power to play in it, but, you don't want to empower the party I think is going to win. I think we end up with Watkins. I think we end up with Watkins. Unless United, look, it's 50-50. I know Romano said this, but I think we'll end up with Watkins, simply because when United prioritise a player, they either get them or they don't. No one else is in for Watkins like they were for Gyökeres and Delap, and Watkins was the priority on Thursday. So I don't understand why last Monday or Tuesday we heard that Šeško was too expensive. Then on Thursday, Watkins, as we broke, was the priority. So we'd moved away from Šeško because of price, and then we've gone for Watkins. Now, unless that price is coming down, which it hasn't, why would we go back in for Šeško? So I just think it's going to be Watkins. That's my feeling on it. But I could be wrong. But I don't think we'll have either of them for the start of the season, by the way. I think that's highly unlikely, considering the Premier League kicks off 2 weeks on Friday. Right, anyway, let me talk to you about the goalkeeper situation, because actually, we could spend hours talking about Šeško or Watkins, and realistically, we're not going to change that outcome at all. It's going to be based upon updates that we don't know when they're going to come. What we do know around the striker situation is that Ben Jacobs, and we've still got to talk about Luke Shaw. We've got time. Don't worry, we have got time. We've got time. Where was it? Where are you? Okay. Ben Jacobs last night saying that talks are still ongoing for Lammens of Royal Antwerp. I mean, I think this is as good as it gets now with the goalkeeping situation. And I've got to be absolutely clear on this. I'm sort of, I don't want to pop the positivity of signing a striker, because I think that is very, very positive. But we have to get a goalkeeper in, don't we? We've got to get a goalkeeper in. And at this juncture, if you give me Lammens, I will judge the window in August. But I'm almost like, and I'm trying to think of an analogy here. When you've been on holiday and the weather's not been that great, and you look at the weather app and it's your last day, and you're going to get the bus at 5 o'clock. And then your last day is going to be a scorcher. I'm sort of like, don't give a shit. Just get me on the plane and get me out of it. I'll go on the beach until 2 o'clock. I'll have a quick shower. I'll go to the airport. But you know what? It is what it is now. I've not had the weather I wanted. I'll enjoy my last day, and then I'm going home. And I think that with regards to the goalkeeper, I'll take that sunny day at the end of this window every day of the week over another rainy day, because I can't fathom why, and that's why I don't believe, and I'll give you some opinion here. I don't believe for 1 minute that Ruben Amorim and Jason Wilcox and Omar Barada want to go into the season with Binder and Onana. Not 1 minute do I believe that. In fact, I know that's not the case. And I therefore don't believe they will, because their jobs are on the line. CEOs can get sacked, director of football can get sacked, and managers certainly can get sacked. They know that's an issue in the team. They will not go, well, I don't believe they will go into the season with those two. And when I say season, after the transfer window, obviously we might go into Arsenal with those two, we might go into Fulham with those two, but I'm absolutely convinced, because they don't want it to happen and they know the mistake it is, I don't think they'll go into the season with Onana and Binder as our first two goalkeepers. So the way where I am at the moment is I want Lammens. Just get Lammens in. The only other goalkeeper we've spoken to is Emi Martinez. There's no way we're getting Emi Martinez and Ollie Watkins, and offering a loan deal probably killed that dead. Lammens is well scouted. He is a trajectory goalkeeper in the sense that he has a lot of potential, and I think he should be able to force Onana out of the team. I mean, I want a number one. Like that's desperately what I want. I want a number one. But I think where we are, we're just going to have to go and accept that Lammens is the best we're going to get. So let's go and do it. But I mean, look, apparently we're still in talks with him. He's relatively cheap. I would imagine, just for the question that I haven't seen asked, I would imagine when it comes to Lammens and why we haven't done the deal yet, my imagination on this is that we're probably following a very similar story to what we did with De Ligt and Mazraoui. Got to sell Wan-Bissaka first, and Agate, you got to sell McTominay first. I would imagine with Lammens, we've lined the deal up, but we won't do it until Binder fucks off. I think that might be what's happening. Beckelsman says, what about Sesko? What about Ter Stegen? I heard we wanted him. I mean, look, there might be a late opportunity like that. I mean, I think if you'd asked me 6 weeks ago, I wasn't that, happy about Ter Stegen. I'd be over the bloody moon now. Barcelona's first choice goalkeeper from last year and captain. I'd take him, yeah. Peter Monday says, do you think if we buy Watkins now in 2 or 3 years' time, we should be back in the market looking at Sesko? No. I don't think you go back for Sesko at 25 when he's probably going to be worth about, 80, 90 million. I don't think we'll do that. I think you've got to look at the next Šeško. I think that's what you've got to do. And there will be a next Šeško. I mean, look, on Moani, I think we can discount him. And I think we can discount him anyway. But Fabrizio's update is that Moani only wants Juventus. So that was never a story. But I think in relation to strikers, we're in a better position than we were a week ago, because I think if somebody comes in with Mitrovic, and I've seen people talk about Mitrovic, and I've seen people talk about Nicholas Jackson and Moani, and we've spoken about Moani, but I think we can safely say today it's going to be Šeško or Watkins, 100%. I'm agreed on Watkins, get him now, says Tony. I always said Watkins, but who wants United more, says Pritesh. I think Ollie Watkins will be desperate to come to Manchester United. That's no disrespect to Aston Villa. The relationship with the manager is the big reason there. I think he's had, he's Villa's top Premier League scorer, isn't he? I think he's had a good time at Aston Villa. But when Emery was leaving him out of those PSG games, I think that was it. It was a lack of confidence in your number one striker. So I think that's why he wants to move on. And Man United offers he's not going to get an Arsenal move, is he? He's not going to get a Liverpool move. He's not going to get a Man City move. So Manchester United would be a huge opportunity for him. And also starting up front for Man United in a side that's rejuvenated, it massively helps his England World Cup hopes, doesn't it? Look, I'll tell you what I would love to see, and I'm not massively into England, even though I'm English. Harry Kane is world class. I just can't stand him in an England team. He doesn't suit it. He doesn't suit the system. He wants to drop into the midfield, and we need a striker that plays on the last man. If Watkins comes to Man United and starts scoring goals playing on the last man, I'd start him for England as well. But that's England's problem. Hi, mate, says Wakas. I was thinking about Bournemouth. We should play Cunha up front, Bruno and Mbeumo behind him, just to try would love to hear your thoughts. Mbeumo's not playing, mate. Unless I've missed something, Mbeumo's not playing. That was announced on the weekend that he won't be quite ready. So I don't think we'll see Mbeumo at all. Keel Robinson says Rasmus was thrown in at the deep end and got 16 goals. We're now odds on for Sesko, says Robert McCormack. Watkins is giving me Mount vibes, injury prone. He's not injury prone, Alexander. I'm sorry. I appreciate your super chat, but he's not injury prone. You can't say he's injury prone when he's had no injuries for the last 5 years, apart from a couple last year that were relatively minor. That's not injury prone. I think injury prone for me is somebody that, look, if Watkins is injury prone, then so is Ahmad. Ahmad's missed half the season for the last 2. So Ahmad's more injury prone than Watkins, and I don't think Ahmad's injury prone. I think he's had a couple of injuries last year, but before that, no injuries. Watkins, if we believe Rasmus and Obi are the future. Šeško, if we want to reset and believe he can hit the ground running, says Sam. I think you do have to look at those sort of things as well. If Watkins flops, we're screwed, and we help Villa, says Malik. The pressure, the huge price tag put on a young player is huge. We are no stranger to those types of flops at the club, says Sudeth. And I think that's a good point as well. You know, Šeško's never played in the Premier League. He's 22 just. He's going to have a very big price tag, and he's going to carry the burden of scoring goals for Manchester United in a league he's never played for. And he wasn't prolific at Leipzig. He wasn't scoring like 30 goals. It wasn't like Haaland at Dortmund. He's good, but he's not, wouldn't describe him as prolific. Watkins comes in. I've played the game. I've played the league. You know, sometimes an older player, they play without fear as well, because they see it as their last, you know, they embrace it. So there's all sorts to assess. Great position to be in, but we must act quickly. I voted Šeško, but after Mbermo leaning towards Watkins, after what he said in his interview with Rio. Fletcher Smith, that was from Andrew R65. Fletcher says, Beth persuaded me today, so I think it has to be Watkins. I haven't even watched the Beth video yet, so I didn't know which way Beth was going. I mean, she did say get an Arna, but you know what? So did some of you lot. A lot of you did as well. But I haven't watched Beth's video, actually. I'm going to watch it with a cup of tea in a minute. So I will enjoy that, because the background is immense. I love the fact that they're doing them from that lovely background in Chicago. But Fletcher Smith says, Beth persuaded me today, so I think it has to be Watkins. But if we do take the risk, I wouldn't be mad with Šeško. Dan O'Connell says it's a toss-up between experience and potential, and who we can get for the right price and fast. Rasmus was potential. Could he learn from Watkins? That's from Dan. I think, look, Rasmus is a separate conversation. I still think Rasmus, if we brought Watkins or Šeško in, might say, I want to go. He might not. I mean, I personally think that it's interesting, because I was speaking to a couple of Coventry fans last night. I think they're playing Betis tonight in a friendly in Coventry, and they were saying we're going to do Anthony, and I said he's not there. He's not gone yet, so he's not there. But they were talking about, like, you know, their championship season ahead, and I went, like, you know what? If things went right for us, I'd love to see Obi go on loan and play up front for like a Coventry in the championship. I think that would be great. But look, whether it's Šeško, whether it's Watkins, I do think that Rasmus staying wouldn't be a bad idea, because Watkins will potentially pick up injuries, but also the Premier League is so intense now. What striker plays 90 minutes every single game? Like there will be 20 minutes, half an hour. You know, you want competition for places as well. There's no resale value if Watkins fails, says Malik. Sarvish says people crying about age 29 either haven't experienced Van Persie transfer or forgot about it. Well, how old was Zlatan when we brought him in? You know, how old was Ronaldo when we brought him in? Stofonda says we are down to plan D and E, but look on the bright side, we could have gotten our plan A. Šeško and Watkins are both better than Delap. Good point, Stofonda. Pengas says fans who say Sesko is the only option are the type of people who want to buy a Ferrari when all they can afford and need is a Toyota. Get Watkins, get back to the Champions League, and then buy the next future star. Thank you, Pengas. And Kevin says, I hope you're well. We should approach this Premier League proven stance carefully. Sanchez, Schneiderlin, Lukaku all come to mind. And that's from Kevin. And I'd take the one we can get in the door quickest, says Slazy. You could just take the cheapest. You know, you could take the cheapest and go, that leaves us money for other deals as well. I mean, nobody's really saying that. If you could get Watkins for 50, that's £20 million cheaper. That gets you Lammens. That might get you another midfielder. You know, no one's looking at it like that. Is it, do you want Šeško or do you want Watkins and a goalkeeper or a midfielder? 20 million is instalment one on a £50 million midfielder, isn't it? So it's another way of looking at it. Steg says Watkins will be a huge contract, huge wage, and no guarantee he hasn't already peaked. Šeško sell on value alone makes him a better option. Yeah, but we're a football club, we're not business, Steg. I take what you're saying on board, but I think too many times we're a business and not a football club. I'm not really bothered about huge contract, huge wage, and I don't think it will be. I don't think it will be a huge contract and a huge wage, to be honest. Do we want a dynamic United or a Watkins that doesn't excite anyone? Šeško is amazing and wants to come and play for us, United, says Nicholas. 10 a.m. show, 2 p.m. show, 8 p.m. show, 2 a.m. show, watch along, 4 a.m. match reaction. Mark, thank you for all the amazing content. You've just knackered me with that BZD. I've just realised. So 10 o'clock show now, 2 o'clock show, 8 o'clock show tonight, 2 a.m. watch along, and then 4 a.m. match reaction. Both are good, says John, but we can't stall. We need to get it done, push through some more deals like a goalkeeper and a midfielder, and sort the outgoings, says John. There is that as well. Right, I want to talk about this. This is, look, fair play to Luke Shaw, right? I was talking to Beth about this yesterday. So Luke Shaw did some interviews yesterday, and we were fortunate enough to get a couple of questions to him. Fair play to him for doing them. You know, he might have heard what I've had to say and say, I'm not answering questions from them. In fairness, if he had said that, he obviously hasn't heard that over the last 10 years, I've probably been his biggest supporter. I've always said that Luke Shaw is one of the best left backs in the world when he's fit. I've always defended him. I think he's a fantastic player. But I will admit, and it is mine to own, that in the last 12 months, I've been a bit harsh on him because it pissed me off that he was injured for 6 months before the Euros final. And then he didn't even play in the Euros until the final. And then he was injured for another what felt like 6 months afterwards. It felt like England was his priority and Manchester United is mine. So it pissed me off. I also think that the contract he was given, which isn't his fault, is incredible when you look at his injury history. He's not been fit for 2 years as well. I know for a fact he's well liked at Manchester United. I know that in the dressing room they like him. Amorim likes him. So look, that's never been in doubt. But there is a frustration around Luke Shaw. And I'm sure he shares that frustration. But we're a football club, we're not a charity. And I feel with Luke Shaw over the last 2 years, the boundaries have been pushed a little bit. I just think he should have apologised publicly. I think he should have come out and done an interview and said, look, you know, it was never my intention to upset or, you know, disrespect Manchester United Football Club. It was just a freak of coincidence that I didn't play the last 3 or 4 months of the season. I got called up for the Euros. I didn't play through the Euros. I was fit for the final, and then I didn't play for another 4 or 5 months for Man United. You know, I know how that looks. I'm sorry to any United fans if it offended them, but it was just one of those things that, you know, would never happen again. It was just a coincidence. But we haven't had that. It's just sort of got swept under the carpet. And I think we, you know, as people who've supported this player and support this club, I just felt a little bit like we were took the piss out of. I also think when he came back from injury at the end of last season, he didn't look anything like the Luke Shaw I know in relation to performance. I don't think he's got back. Normally he's out for 3 months, comes back, plays really well, gets injured 2 games later. And for those 2 games, you go, oh, I wish he was fit. Obviously, I don't think he played very well at the end of last season as well. So there's question marks over Luke Shaw. Of course there is. But, you know, and I don't think anybody would have been allowed to ask him a question about fitness yesterday before anybody says anything. I do wonder, just if I could ask a question to Luke Shaw, honestly, I would have said, are you capable of playing 3 months in a row in the Premier League without getting injured? Or are you at a point with your body now where you know, and the fitness people know, you're just going to be managing injuries for the rest of your career? I'd love to know the answer to that question. You can't answer it in public, really, I suppose, because you're giving away, you know, why would you say that publicly? But the big thing for me for Luke Shaw is, can he get fit? And can he stay fit? And then on top of that, can he get back to being the player he was? Because I remember Luke Shaw playing left centre-back with Varane against Barcelona and was brilliant. And I remember for about 2 months, we used him as a left centre-back. And he was, I was saying at the time, he's one of the best left centre-backs in the Premier League. So when it comes to ability, he's definitely got it. But has he still got it? And it's a big season for Luke Shaw, realistically. But look, he spoke. This is what he had to say. And I think some of it was quite interesting. He said, On Ruben Amorim, he said he's really tough on the group. There's no stragglers in this team anymore. I mean, that's a big, big statement. Now, some people might say, well, Luke Shaw should be one of the stragglers booted out. I don't think Luke Shaw should be put into the same category as people like Marcus Rashford and Garnacho and Anthony and Sancho. I think that's a different level of, conversation. But it's interesting that he's saying that because he spoke very glowingly of Amorim. And remember, it's amazing, but Luke Shaw has been managed by Van Gaal, Jose, Ten Hag, Ollie, and now Amorim, and everything in between, Rangnick, Van Nistelrooy, and God knows who else we've had as in between. So he's been managed by everybody. And obviously Jose was not Luke Shaw's biggest fan, and I don't think he still is. So for Luke Shaw to be saying that a manager is tough, you can take it for granted that he is tough. And for Luke Shaw to be saying there's no stragglers in the team anymore, that's a big suggestion from a senior player that he's not opposed to people like Marcus Rashford, who's an England teammate, Jadon Sancho, England teammate, obviously played with him in the Euros final in Wembley, Garnacho, etc. He obviously doesn't have a problem with that and sees it as a positive. He says, we feel like a real team, especially this pre-season. Since I've been back, the group is so together. I think that's something that we need to keep to and make us more of a family and everyone all together. But he also went on to say that this Manchester United side could win a Premier League. He said, why not? I see the players in training every day. I see the immense quality that we have, and I think we can win the league. Now, there's going to be a lot of laughing emojis. In fact, they're already there, and I certainly would laugh at it. But you know what I took from that? Instead of ridiculing a Man United player for saying, why can't we win the Premier League? Because we can all list off 100 reasons why not. You know what I took from that? A deep breath. And then I went, there's actually something there. Before you take the piss out of Luke Shaw, there's actually something there we spoke about last night. We're talking about Cunha and Mbeumo last night, and people were telling me the goals they're going to score. And I went, they're 2 players out of 11. There's 9 other players in that team that have already shown, whilst they can be good, they can also drop their heads mentally. They're also inconsistent, whether that's, Ugarte, Harry Maguire, Rasmus Højlund, Ahmad. They've all played in games where we've been shit last season. So they've all got the potential of having quiet games, no matter how good we think they are. That, to me, is Man United's biggest issue. You can bring in as many good players as you want, but they will still be surrounded by players that you can't totally trust because they've already shown that they can play in teams that just fall away, whether that's Bruno as well. Bruno's played in games. Look at the Europa League final. Every single player that played the Europa League final has to have a question mark against them on their mentality and consistency, because in the biggest game we've had in years, they didn't turn up. So this is always the thing. And when Luke Shaw says we could win the Premier League, I've seen how good they are in training. I don't doubt that. I bet they're bloody brilliant in training. I used to get told amazing things about Marcus Rashford in training. The things Marcus Rashford did in training, he should be winning the Ballon d'Or. If I had £1 for every time somebody told me that, I'd have about £5. So I don't disagree with what Luke Shaw's saying about the quality. I mean, look at the squad. But the problem is, and the reason we can't win the Premier League, is that what we do in training isn't what we do on the pitch. And that's the biggest dilemma for everybody. It must be frustrating. I bet Amorim and Luke Shaw watch training and go, we're as good as anybody. But we all know, put us in front of 75,000 people against Bournemouth in the Premier League, and we might get beat. And that's something I don't think you solve with a pre-season. I think this is it's almost like a dressing room mentality that you've got to break down and rebuild again. And I think that until we start showing consistency, that will always be the problem. So I don't have a massive issue with Luke Shaw saying this squad's really good. I see it in training. Why can't it win the Premier League? We all know why it can't win the Premier League, because it's not just about ability. What's the big saying in life? I always say it to my daughter who plays football. Talent only takes you so far. Consistency takes you the rest. I've seen so many players in my life watching football, but also playing football, who were immensely talented, but didn't have that. And I've seen some people, Gary Neville, who weren't the most talented player, but because of that, was one of the best right backs I've seen England have in my life. And that that's a testament to, you know, hard work and dedication. And I think mental capacity as well. I know people that are weak mentally at sports, but they're not. It's not that they don't work hard. They're just weak mentally. That's just the makeup of who they are. Why are addicts addicts? You know, why are lazy people lazy? Like Man United, for whatever reason, have this collective dressing room mentality that when things go wrong, we fall apart. I still think if we'd scored first against Spurs, we'd be in the Champions League. If we'd have scored that scrappy, crappy goal that Spurs scored, we'd have won that game, because Spurs set up to be defensive and counter, and they wouldn't have been able to do that at 1-0 down. But because we conceded first, we were like, oh shit, you know, what happens? And all the composure and all the mentality disappears. So I think Luke Shaw makes a good point. I think we have got a team that's, it's not a Premier League winning team, but it should be in the top 4. Certainly should be in the top 5. But we can't put it there because we're terrified that we can't trust this team. Simple as that. As Reece says, the players freeze too often. If you want to see those interview clips with Luke Shaw, they're on our Facebook page, they're on TikTok, they're on X, and we've got the full video on YouTube as well. Also, I want to go and watch Beth's video now because I want to see what she said about Watkins, because I didn't know she'd gone Watkins over Šeško. So I'm intrigued to see that. Wraith says Gary Neville wasn't talented. He was world class and was better than all the usual suspect lauders. No, I disagree. Gary Neville said it himself, but I disagree. I watched Gary Neville play in the Euros in '96. Which was the breakout year for the class of '92, and he'd been playing for a while. I don't think he was the most talented right back naturally. I think most of his career was based on hard work, dedication and learning, and that's why he became one of the best right backs England have ever had. But it wasn't, for me, based on talent. It was based on hard work. Hayden Hackney's going to Ipswich for 15 million, says Ma. Don't tell the hipsters. They'll be devastated. Told you we were never in for Hayden Hackney. I don't know what that was all about. I've seen so many United content creators and United hipsters and TikTokers saying Hayden Hackney, and I've been like, it just proves they've got no fucking idea about what they're talking about when they talk about sources. We've never been in for him. Never. I don't even know if he's decent. We're back at 2. It's a big day. We've got a watch along, 8 o'clock show, everything's going on. Interesting morning. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. But interesting morning. Šeško 61%, Watkins 39%. Yesterday, Šeško 75%, and Watkins was 25%. So it's moving towards Watkins the longer this goes. Still, Šeško is the outright favourite, but let's see what happens. Kickoff time for Bournemouth is 2:30 a.m. UK time. So we're about 12, 14 and a half. We're about 16 and a half hours away from it, I think. Oh, well, take care, everyone. Speak to you in a bit.